everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Bamiyan Buddhas. The Buddha sculptures in Afghanistan's Bamiyan Valley were considered the largest sculptures of their kind in the world up until their destruction in 2001. These sculptures were reduced to rubble at the hands of extremists who were ordered to demolish the Buddhas by Mullah Omar, the Afghan leader of the Taliban. So now the monuments are gone after being the largest Buddhas in the world for 1,500 years. Nobody knows who built these magnificent monuments in the dry mountains of Afghanistan, but the simple fact that they existed shows just how important the Bamiyan Valley was for the Buddhist faith during the days of the Silk Road. Bamiyan is located at a crossroads connecting the Indian subcontinent to Central Asia. It was one of the most profitable branches of the Silk Road, connecting the east to the west. Merchants and missionaries stopped here during their travels through the inhospitable terrain to rest, and most of the people moving through the region were Buddhist, which helped the religion spread. It was around the 6th century that Buddhist cave architecture grew popular throughout Asia. Even with the two great monuments in ruins, there are still almost 1,000 Buddhist cave sanctuaries carved along Bamiyan's epic cliff face. The largest of the two Buddhas stood 175 feet tall. Art historian Susan Huntington said it was likely a representation of the Buddha Vairochana. The smaller statue was only 120 feet tall, but it was still pretty huge. All that remains now, though, are the empty holes in the cliff where they once stood. Number 9. Mysterious Bones. There is a holy mountain in northern Greece that's been home to Christian monasteries for almost 2,000 years. It's a controversial place these days because women are strictly prohibited. Males are the only ones allowed at Pantokratoros Monastery, which is located on Mount Athos. But during recent restoration works, archaeologists unearthed bones beneath the chapel floor that were unusually small. They didn't resemble the bones of a man, but rather the bones of a female. The excavation leader told the Greek reporter that the bones almost definitely belonged to a woman, the first discovery of its kind ever found on the mountain. She wasn't the only one buried in the chapel, though. A total of 7 individuals had their skeletons placed beneath the floor. They must have been extremely important to have been buried in such a holy site, right beneath the floorboards of a place of worship. Most of the bones were obviously male based on their measurements, but the one skeleton had smaller shin bones and forearms than the others, suggesting that it may in fact be a woman. What researchers are trying to do now is figure out who the woman may have been. Mount Athos is still home to about 2,500 male monks spread throughout its 20 monasteries. Women aren't allowed within 0.3 miles of the edge of the mountain, a ban that's been in place for 1,000 years. But the mountain has been holy for twice as long. Since the year 382 AD, official records show that 12 women have set foot on the mountain. Some disguised themselves as men, while others were victims of political turmoil seeking refuge. But if a woman was really buried under the chapel, she was much more than a refugee. She would have been a saintly woman or someone of nobility. Researchers can't say for sure, though, until further research is done. Number 8. The Harry Potter Spider. A newly identified wolf spider has been found living in a mountain burrow. This spider is shocking because it looks almost identical to the giant fictional spider named Aragog in the Harry Potter universe. It looks so much like Aragog that scientists named the freaky spider after the colossal monster. According to graduate student Ali Reza Zamani from the Iranian University of Tehran, they named it Lycosa aragogi. The creature was discovered by Iranian entomologists in the country's Kerman province. Only a single specimen was identified, a female spider living on a rocky mountain in an underground nest. But nobody has found a male specimen for comparison. The spider is only about 1 inch long, with hairy black legs and a thick upper body. The arachnid also has terrifying appendages in its mouth. And much like a wolf spider, it lives during the day in its burrow and goes out at night to hunt. They build webs and only live for about 3 years in the wild. But the most interesting feature of this spider is its eyesight. It has a layer of tissue behind its retinas called iridescent tapetum. When any kind of light shines into its eye, it reflects off the tissue back into the retina. and this creates an effect like a cat's eyes glowing in the dark. That's how spider specialists collect them at night, by shining their flashlights around looking for the glow of their eyes. Anybody want to go outside and look for spiders? Number 7. The Treasure Trove. In 2011, there was a big melt in Norway's mountains. Summer brought unprecedented permafrost melt, revealing lost secrets along an ancient trail used by people to move across the mountains during the Viking Age. Researchers traveled to the Lendbreen Pass, which is situated high in the mountains, and they couldn't believe what they found. They had to watch where they were walking because everywhere they stepped were artifacts. The route was used starting in the Roman era and all the way through the Middle Ages. Due to the melting of the ice, everything that had been thrown aside by Viking Age traffic was just lying there on the rocks. There were a lot of fantastic discoveries made, with more being uncovered every day as the ice continues to melt. Over 1,000 objects have been revealed throughout the mountain pass, including things like horse dung all over the ground and a tunic from 1,700 years ago, which became the oldest piece of clothing ever found in Norway. Many of these items came from the Roman period around 300 AD, but most of the artifacts dated back closer to 1000 AD, right after the Vikings had retired from pillaging. James Barrett from the University of Cambridge said the increase in traffic coincides with a time of high mobility. Trade was becoming increasingly important, and Scandinavians were more mobile than ever, traversing the mountains with wagons full of goods to be sold. Researchers found about 400 animal bones, largely from pack horses, as well as a ski from the Bronze Age. And preserved in the ice for over a millennia, textiles and random pieces of ancient trash, discarded as litter, were uncovered during Norway's Big Melt. Number 6. Disturbing cultic sites. In the Eilat Mountains of Israel, archaeologists have identified about 100 prehistoric sites used by ancient cults. The sites date back 8,000 years, long before the religions of Mesopotamia or Judea. The Eilat Mountains are rocky formations that tower above the Negev desert, and for an unknown reason, prehistoric cave dwellers were climbing these mountains and participating in strange rituals at their religious sites. They left behind an obscene number of phallic carvings. Some of the sites are still occupied by stone circles, in which the stones were carved to look exactly like the male reproductive organ. But what was the bizarre obsession with these prehistoric cults and phallic shapes? We'll probably have to blur these images for the video, but I'm sure you get the picture. The experts say it was all about fertility and death. They believe the ancient people brought animals to the tops of mountains and then sacrificed them in ceremonies. There would have been hundreds of similar sites spread throughout the area, and while experts can't say exactly what was going on through the minds of these people, it was likely something to do with the cycle of life and death. The cave dwellers knew how babies were made, so they likely associated phallic shapes with the creation of life. Number 5. The Dacian mountain capital. Before they were destroyed by the Romans, the Thracians occupied a massive part of Eastern Europe. They dominated what is now Romania, Moldova, and portions of Bulgaria and Serbia. But that's not all. Their influence spread all the way to Hungary, Slovakia, Ukraine, and Poland. During the rule of King Burebista, from around 61 BC until 44 BC, the Dacian tribes were unified into a mighty alliance called the Dacian Kingdom. The Dacians were a people of Thrace, just like how Sicilians are also Italians. And their capital was located at Sarmizegetusa Regia, a fortress perched over 3,600 feet above sea level at the very top of a mountain. The stronghold was extremely impressive. It was built over 5 levels, spanning an area of about 7 acres. It was split into different zones: residential, ceremonial, and civic. And some of the biggest sanctuaries from Thrace are still at the mountain capital. Rectangular temples still stand, and disused altars are surrounded by stone circles. Archaeological excavations have revealed that the Dacians likely worshipped Zalmoxis here, a god most people have never heard of. The thing about the Thracians was that they believed themselves to be immortal. They didn't die, they joined Zalmoxis after their body was rendered useless. And every 4 years, they'd send a messenger to meet with Zalmoxis in a death ceremony. But these people and their fascinating religion came to an end in 102 AD. The Dacian kingdom was invaded by the Roman Empire, and as a result, their mountaintop citadel was left in shambles. If you were the ruler of a newly discovered piece of land, what would you call your kingdom? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Number 4. Galileo and the Mountains of the Moon. In 1609, Galileo Galilei pointed his telescope at the moon for the first time. What he discovered would change the course of science, and later get Galileo labeled a heretic by the church. At the beginning of the 17th century, people still believed in the model of the universe created by Aristotle 2,000 years earlier in Greece. That was the belief that Earth was a realm of mortal life at the center of the universe. The celestial objects in the sky never changed and never moved. Aristotle even blamed Earth for corrupting the moon, resulting in its dark patches. And for centuries, people had assumed the dark parts of the moon were like scars obtained from an illness. But in 1609, Galileo saw what the patches of darkness really were. Through the lens, he witnessed mountains on the moon. He watched as the light from the sun drifted across the lunar surface, and he noticed how the mountains cast shadows just like they do on Earth. It was a major discovery because Galileo saw with his own eyes that the moon has terrain similar to that on Earth. However, he wasn't the first scientist to make geographical assumptions about the moon. In the 1st century AD, Greek philosopher Plutarch suggested there were valleys on the moon and that it was likely inhabited by its own people. And weirdly enough, the church accepted the idea of mountains on the moon. But the thing they couldn't accept was Galileo claiming the Earth revolved around the sun. Number 3. Gold Mountain. In the Congo, villagers in Luhihi discovered gold in the soil of a mountain. They showed up with shovels and tools in droves to desperately dig the gold out of the ground. Freelance journalist Ahmad Algoberi even shared a video of the anarchy online. In the footage, you can see villagers so desperate for gold that they're clawing at the ground with their bare hands. Locals were filling buckets and pockets with soil, then running back to their village to sift through it in hopes of finding the precious metal. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the richest nations in the world when it comes to deposits of minerals. They have cobalt, copper, diamonds, and a lot more. So it was no surprise to any of the experts when locals found a mountain seemingly made of gold. There's been no word on how much gold is buried beneath the mountain. The last bit of information that came from the village was that the government showed up to shut down the unauthorized mining. Hopefully, though, for the sake of the villagers, they managed to extract at least some gold before the government came to take it away. Number 2. Greek Hippos. On an island in Greece, archaeologists discovered pygmy hippo fossils. Researchers from the University of Athens were working on Crete's Dictys mountain when they found a ridiculous concentration of hippopotamus fossils. The bones date back to about 350,000 years ago, and they were buried on the Cassaro Plateau, 3,600 feet above sea level. But how did a treasure trove of hippo bones end up at the top of a mountain? It's all about the soil and sediment. Centuries of earthquakes and land shifts brought the bones from the surface of the island all the way to the top. Pygmy hippos aren't even the only animals that have been found on Crete, or on other Aegean islands for that matter. Paleontologists have also found the remains of dwarf elephants on islands throughout the Mediterranean. Crete isn't a particularly large island, which makes it a little more difficult to believe that elephants once lived on it. But these weren't ordinary elephants. Many of them only grew to around 4 feet tall. This was an elephant that you could hop on and ride like a donkey. It's the same for the pygmy hippos. Their bones are really small. But if you thought they were extinct, you'd be wrong. They don't live on Crete anymore, but can still be found in West Africa, creeping through swamps and forests. Number 1. Alien matter in South Africa. In South Africa, the Makonjwa Mountains are believed to be home to some of the oldest rocks that are on this planet. It's an exhilarating and epic landscape, full of rocks that are billions of years old. But not everything is as it seems. Scientists recently discovered evidence of alien organic matter buried in sediment. Astrobiologist Francis Westall from the CNRS Center for Molecular Biophysics says it's the first time that extraterrestrial carbon has been found in rocks on Earth. For billions of years, the planet has been hit by meteorites. So many space rocks have impacted the planet that they've rearranged its surface multiple times. Scientists even think the original recipe for life arrived on a meteorite. Such a large number of meteorites have hit this area in South Africa that they've been mixed into the soil. Researchers found the alien material using electron paramagnetic resonance spectroscopy. They scanned rocks that were 3.3 billion years old and were shocked to see that they contained two different types of organic matter. And amazingly, both types suggest extraterrestrial origins. One of the readings showed nanoparticles of nickel and chromium, things that typically come from space rocks, and the other reading showed organic compounds. Organic matter only survives on a meteorite if the temperature stays below several hundred degrees. It's not something that happens often. Researchers have hypothesized that there was a hailstorm of micrometeorites 3.3 billion years ago that crashed into the planet. Those micrometeorites then mixed with volcanic ash clouds, gradually spreading across the surface of South Africa. And over millions of years, that layer of ash and alien dust was pushed up to the surface of the Maconjwa Mountains. But what does all this really mean? The simple answer is that there's a mountain in Africa with alien compounds mixed in with its dirt. And apparently, those same organic compounds may have been responsible for bringing life to this planet from elsewhere in the universe. But what do you think? Did life on Earth really come from tiny particles on a space rock? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!